All right, I'm going to introduce tonight's presenter. She is actually a neighbor of mine. We live on the same street, but I wouldn't have met her except for through the Truth community. So it's been my pleasure to actually meet my neighbors and build community. And then I was fortunate to meet Paige and find out her artistic background. She does videography, film.
I do directing, writing, and producing, and my fiance does the editing.
And she had a zine that she was doing, and podcasts and all sorts of stuff. So just an all-over creative talent that we are happy to have here in Seattle. Happy to meet. I'm going to turn it over to Paige DeCicco, and I'll let you introduce what you're going to share.
Okay, so a little bit more about me. I did actually work in the film industry for 8 years before I was canceled. Luckily, I had kind of already retired right before I was canceled, which kind of helped me just say what needed to be said without fear of losing my job. So I have a background in film, and this is what we do now. My partner and I, my fiance and I, we made music videos. So let's play, this is our latest music video. The artist is Abby London, and we've made several videos with her lately, and this is probably our best one. We're super happy with this one, so. Because I grew up Christian, I went to a Christian college. I'm very into studying the Bible for the Bible, not like just everybody's indoctrinated interpretation. And then my partner's an atheist. I know that's weird. So my presentation, since I am a writer, wannabe writer, I love story, and I thought that I would kind of walk us through sort of the power of story and this kind of evolution of story to kind of where we are today with where it's evolved. So, power of story. Story is kind of one of the fundamental things that we learn from. It's one of the first things we learn how to, interact with the world and interact with each other. And through that, there are different types of stories. So fable is your most basic kind of moral lesson, biblical parable kind of story, often seen in kids' books, acted out with animals that have different characteristics, many variety of characteristics that kind of mimic people, right? Because we're all very different. It's easier to show in animals and more fun. So fables always have a moral or lesson. They explain kind of facts of life types of narratives, and they show that actions have consequences. So some examples of fables are the tortoise and the hare, or the political bureaucrats and Antifa versus Greenwood residents and freedom fighters. And your basic fable story with this one is that the hare is overconfident, thinks he can win this, so he runs ahead and he's like, I've got time to take a nap. And while he's sleeping on the job, the tortoise wins. So that's kind of the hare fable there. This one, pretty self-explanatory. The Emperor's New Clothes. This fable, the kind of lesson is that it only really takes one small voice of truth to break the spell. And I think we're doing that pretty well. And then my personal favorite, Jack and the Beanstalk, or Alex Jones versus the Deep State.
Oh, that's good.
And this fable is interesting because usually you think of this fable as a foolish boy who trades his only source of food for some magic beans.
What's that meme?
I made that meme.
I want that meme.
Okay. I thought of you, Tim. But really, in reality, this fable is kind of fable, almost fairy tale hybrid, but the lesson here is that sometimes high risk equals high reward. And so that's Jack and the Beanstalk.
That's cool.
You gotta have to search for that a little bit more. And then we move on to fairy tale. Fairy tales often are damsels in distress, love conquers all. And good stories always have an element of truth. If there is no element of truth in a good story, or in a story, it's not gonna hold up. It won't last the test of time. And I do believe that love does conquer all. So I think fairy tales do pack that punch. They often have an element of magic or supernatural. They play with the classic good versus evil narrative, which is something that we as humans just need in narrative all the time. We need that sort of black and white distinction of good versus evil. We just kind of need it, and the higher ups know that. Happy endings, usually that's just in American versions. Most fairy tales do not have happy endings. And they don't always have a moral or a lesson, but sometimes they do.
That's good. I know. Paige, you're going to have to share.
Yep. Pinocchio is an Italian fairy tale with a very strong moral lesson.
Got that.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And then we move on to myths. So from fable to fairy tale to myth is sort of the natural progression of story. Myths often deal with origin stories. They explain how things came to be, such as the creation of the world, natural phenomenons. Every culture in the world has a flood story, which I think is so cool. And then deities for things that cannot be explained. Often myths are the first recording of historical events, but with scientific inaccuracies, because science really wasn't, fully scientific then yet. And myths are often pre-religious stories offering an organized way to live. I personally love myths because there's a lot more wiggle room in them. Okay, and then...
Wait, go back. You got to go over that. Leftist gods.
Oh, right, the leftist gods. Big Pharma, captured institutions and academy, Marxist, socialism, communism, race baiting, climate change hysteria, COVID scientism, pride, and mainstream media.
That's like Mercury is mainstream media. You got the Bacchus as the pride. Or I love that. That's great.
Thank you. I made all the memes.
That's
I had to make them, but I wrote them, I guess. Can you write a meme? I don't know.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Teamwork.
I'm the idea person, and he is the creator.
Oh, that's awesome.
Okay, so modern stories. This is not my cartoon. I just found it. Modern stories have sort of evolved into more entertainment. Modern entertainment has drifted away from practical lessons that fables have to offer, leaving the viewers to find their own meaning within stories. Now, this is not inherently bad. It's often good to find your own meaning in a story. It doesn't mean it's a bad story if there isn't an overt lesson or moral. But our modern entertainment has really, our current entertainment has really mostly become propaganda, bordering on indoctrination.
It's pretty funny.
Yeah, this is
Antifa
really good cartoon.
Black Lives Matter horn.
That would be the M word, men or
Men?
Yeah, we would never say the M word, man, right?
ma'am,
Where's that? Oh, midget.
midget.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, because they're
Midget,
dwarfs.
midget.
Well, dwarf isn't necessarily much better. But
I can say
Well,
that.
dwarfism is the technical, the scientific technical name
Oh,
of
okay.
it. Yeah.
I can hate on my own
Yeah.
kind if I want.
Are you? Oh my gosh, Tim.
Big short.
Okay,
Big
so
shorts
then
coming.
from story to propaganda. So, it's a slippery slope. We see what Disney's doing with the.
It's borderline propaganda.
Oh, it is 100% propaganda. They're not even like.
I mean, the early Disney.
Oh, early Disney, absolutely, but now they're not even being sneaky about it.
No,
They're just
you
like,
have to
we're gonna
allow that
indoctrinate.
truth that it was always propaganda.
It is.
Yeah,
It was
it wasn't borderline. It was
But in retrospect, yes. I mean, the early Cinderella, who thought? So.
But
But yeah,
right. But still, I mean, we have to
Pinocchio.
We have to come to grips that there wasn't a golden era of Disney. That when they turned, they were always geared this way. It wasn't just something. At least I think. I don't think that they had.
They were warming us up for the boil. The frogs.
So propaganda is described as a systemic narrative used to influence, persuade, control, and manipulate people's beliefs, attitudes, and actions by means of culture.
Cool.
So, yeah, this video, let's just watch it, and then I have a few questions.
Sounds good.
Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of your cabin crew, we'd like to inform you that we have officially entered Florida airspace. Now that we're making our final descent, please watch this short message from Governor Ron DeSantis on COVID-19. Thereafter, everyone on board will be required to comply with the state's Forever Purge.
We are not doing any vaccine passports in the state of Florida. We trust people to make their own decisions in this state. We are not going to be bludgeoning people with restrictions and mandates and lockdowns or any of that stuff.
As Governor DeSantis stated, while you're within state lines, you do not have to wear a mask. You do not have to get a vaccine. It is against the law for private businesses or schools to mandate masks or vaccines. And you have the absolute right to infect whoever you want, whenever, and wherever with COVID-19. Thank you for traveling with us, and please, enjoy your Forever Purge.
COVID-19 is surging again.
This is the time to double down.
The governor is doubling down. He says students shouldn't be forced to wear masks.
If you are trying to lock people down, I'm going to stand in your way.
Florida just requested 300 new ventilators.
Hospitals are filling up here.
There is evidence that children are making up much higher cases that are emerging.
The numbers continue to rise across Florida.
This fall, don't breathe in.
This is insane.
The Forever Purge. Coming to a theater and live streaming networks near you.
Oh my goodness.
Yes.
Woo, that's
yes.
funny.
Yes. Ron DeSantis
So,
wanted
that,
you to die.
When did that come out? Is that recent?
Hold on. Who thinks that this is, do you think that this is real or is this parody?
You know, I had a hard time telling. I was like, is this against Florida or is this actually making fun of people who would be against Florida?
Raise your hand if you think it's parody.
Yeah.
Yeah, now I want to.
It is not parody.
No way.
It is not parody.
That's an actual campaign ad.
That is an actual campaign ad, and it was created by this man named Daniel.
To remove Ron DeSantis.
Fellow. Yep, who walked around the Florida open beaches dressed as the Grim Reaper.
The what?
The man who created this movement, Remove Ron, and this video, his name was Daniel Oddfellow, I think.
He did a damn good video.
It's a good video, right? He walked around the open beaches of Florida dressed as the Grim Reaper. And then he made this campaign, and this is a perfect example of propaganda. Except that it's not, because we all laughed, right?
Yeah. But we're on this side. We're on this side.
But even if you just listen to what Ron is saying, like, we trust people to make their own decisions, horror music.
Right.
Like,
I didn't want them to get off the plane. I know that they're going to all die because Ron DeSantis is going to kill them with his horrible policies. That's what they intended for the message across.
And that's the power of story.
Don't get off the plane. Yes.
Right there. And the power of editing as well.
Right.
You've got this horror music over this message that is seemingly very benign and American and free. You've got horror music, you've got dark cuts, you've got violence interspersed in between all of it. I mean, this is just using every single editing tactic that you can possibly use. This is using it.
I mean, just look at the kid with the mask and the big shiny eyes.
You have every right to infect whomever you want with COVID-19. Like, juxtaposed between what Ron is saying.
Wow. Yeah. That is a really good example.
So this was propaganda against Ron.
Yeah.
I thought it was for Ron.
Me too. Me too. good example.
Right? Isn't that so great?
You know what?
Yeah, they do. They eat the.
They don't meme well. Is that what I've been told?
It's like something CNN would run.
Well, you know, I thought when I first watched it, I was like, "Is this the Babylon Bee? Because this is hilarious."
Yeah.
It's hilarious. I laughed.
Yeah. I had not seen it.
And it's not, but the Babylon Bee picked it up and did a spot about it, and they're like, "Wow." So that is my favorite example. I mean, it's so blatantly obvious. It uses all the tactics of propaganda. And, well, you know, it's not just things like this that's used in. Like, who watches reality TV or kitchen nightmares, right?
Used to, yeah.
The music in that is so stressful, I can't watch it. Because the music is like evoking emotion, like you're
Kitchen
on
Nightmare,
edge.
it's called?
Yeah, or Hell's Kitchen.
Is that with
Hell's Kitchen with
Gordon Ramsay? Yeah,
it's evoking
I
this
used to watch that.
stress reaction, and that's that's what editing does. And so video propaganda is so much more powerful than even just written word.
Because you're going underneath the.
Because they're going to hit your psyche with the music too.
And
exactly, yeah.
And Paige, the other thing that reminded me of was some of Patty Murray's commercials. I've only seen a few, but it's like she's like, you know, well, the one that I saw was on January 6th, our capital, our democracy. Okay.
We're gonna get there.
Thank you.
I mean, not that ad exactly, but we're definitely.
You know what I'm talking about? Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay, so the next example is from Candace Owens' documentary called The Greatest Lie Ever Sold. It just came out a couple weeks ago. And it's about, she's basically George Floyd and the rise of BLM. This is just a clip from it, but it's a really good example of another propaganda tactic.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, good morning. We plan to prove to you, beyond a reasonable doubt, that Mr. Chauvin was anything other than innocent on May 25th of 2020. Mr. Derek Chauvin used excessive and unreasonable force upon the body of Mr. George Floyd until the very breath, no, ladies and gentlemen, until the very life were squeezed out of him.
You would agree, Chief, that from the perspective of Miss Frazier's camera, it appears that Officer Chauvin's knee is on the neck of Mr. Floyd.
Yes.
Would you agree that from the perspective of Officer King's body camera, it appears that Officer Chauvin's knee was more on Mr. Floyd's shoulder blade?
Yes.
They had to have the jury believe that it was a neck restraint, it was the knee on the neck, it was asphyxiation that killed George Floyd. However, there was a ton of evidence that George Floyd consumed a toxic, lethal cocktail of fentanyl and methamphetamine.
Did it appear that Mr. Floyd said, "I ate too many drugs"?
Yes, it did.
Let's put it in perspective. 3 grains of fentanyl on the head of a lead pencil, enough to kill you, enough to kill me. And so they had to continuously inculcate the public to believe that Derek Chauvin intentionally, premeditatedly murdered George Floyd, and drugs had absolutely nothing to do with it. As Lindsay and the toxicologist presented that awful testimony.
Do you recall describing the level of fentanyl as a fatal level of fentanyl?
I recall describing it in other circumstances. It would be a fatal level, yes, in other circumstances. Had Mr. Floyd been home alone in his locked residence with no evidence of trauma, and the only autopsy finding was that fentanyl level, then yes, I would certify his death as due to fentanyl toxicity.
Almost 4 times. He had almost 4 times the lethal dose in his system.
Wow.
Yeah. So I definitely encourage you guys to watch that documentary. It's very good. But the tactic here, I don't know why it's just doing this, is the camera angle. And I gotta tell you, camera angles are everything. Everything. Okay. So much so that even in the film industry, there's something that's called cheating. And what that is you've got two actors facing one another talking to each other, and you've got the camera here, right? Well, when they're facing one another and talking to each other, you only get like a side of their face, and most of their face is in dark. So what they do is they cheat you. They make you move like this, so you're talking past them, but on camera it looks like you're talking to each other. But you've got more of their face in frame. I mean, that's just one example of how camera angles, it's video magic, really. I mean, it's an illusion. So that is a huge propaganda tool. Any questions on that or comments?
Okay, give us an example in that video. You're saying the angle.
So
the angle of the knee. The angle of the knee.
In the video, it looks like he's on his neck the whole time from one angle, and then from the body cam angle, he's clearly on his shoulder.
That's really interesting.
And I heard from a police officer in Seattle that the body cam footage is not always upheld in the court of law.
Whoa.
I'm like, why have it then?
Why have it? Yeah.
Why have it?
What's the point?
I don't know.
Was he convicted?
Oh yeah, he's in jail. He's in solitary confinement.
So that he won't talk.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Wow.
He's in jail for sure. You should watch the documentary. It's really good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks for that.
Okay, so this next one is about January 6th, the insurrections. This is a little bit of a longer clip, so bear with it. It gets a little rambly.
CBS News.
I know, yeah, CBS News, and the topic is Christian nationalism.
Former President Donald Trump delivered the keynote address at the Faith and Freedom Coalition Conference Friday. During his remarks, the former president touched on freedom of speech and religion and criticized the January 6th House Committee hearings. He says he would pardon the rioters if he becomes president once again.
If it were an insurrection that took place at the Capitol, you would have known it very soon. These were strong people. These were great patriots. They were policemen, they were firemen, they were soldiers, they were sailors.
For more, I want to bring in Amanda Tyler. She is the executive director of the Baptist Joint Committee for Religious Liberty. Amanda, before we get to the former president's comments, just help our viewers understand this concept of Christian nationalism. What is it?
So Christian nationalism is a political ideology and a cultural framework that tries to merge our identities as Americans and Christians. It suggests that to be a true American, one must be a Christian, and really a particular kind of Christian. And in doing so, it betrays the foundational values of religious freedom for all. The idea that our belonging in American society is not at all dependent on how we worship or what we believe or what our religious identity is.
Has the former president endorsed Christian nationalism, and was this ideology at all on display during the January 6th attack?
It absolutely was on display on January 6th, and it was on display in today's speech as well. I found it tragically predictable that it would be this group that would welcome President Trump to the stage just a day after the incredible revelations we heard at yesterday's hearing. The organization that I lead, Baptist Joint Committee for Religious Liberty, worked with colleagues at the Freedom from Religion Foundation to put out a report earlier this year that is the most thorough accounting to date of the role that Christian nationalism played on January 6th, how it worked to unite disparate actors and to justify in their minds and to even sanctify their indefensible actions and violence in trying to overthrow the government and the lawful results of the election on that fateful day on January 6th. And so we've seen how Christian nationalism, how it shows up in visual ways, in ways like signs of the insurrection or signs about appeals to God, or equating God and Trump, or saying that somehow Trump's re-election was preordained, part of God's bigger plan, how these helped feed and sustain the big lie, and how former President Trump continued along those lines today as he was appealing to familiar incantations of Christian nationalism, saying that our founding documents were divinely inspired, or that our civil rights and liberties came directly from God, or in one of the biggest applause lines of the day when he said, "In America, we don't worship government, we worship God." Of course, the problem is that no single religion has ever united Americans. Instead, what unites Americans is our commitment to religious freedom for all. And former President Trump's continuing appeals to Christian nationalism threaten that value.
Okay, so I want to go back to something that you touched on earlier. You said Christian nationalism is one of the biggest threats to religious freedom in this country. Just get specific about why you believe that's true.
I'm going to talk about it.
Well, one very specific instance is an anniversary that we tragically mark today. 7 years ago today, 9 Black worshipers were murdered in the Mother Emanuel AME Church. This is a tragic example of how Christian nationalism in the hands of a violent extremist can turn deadly. We saw that again at the Tree of Life Synagogue outside of Pittsburgh, and of course we saw it on January 6th itself. Christian nationalism feeds white supremacy, it feeds anti-Semitism, it feeds anti-Muslim sentiment, and all of these factors threaten the religious freedom of our neighbors. But it also threatens religious freedom for Christians as well, because a government-sponsored religion has never been a good thing for religion or religious liberty. Government is uniquely ill-qualified in matters of religion. And so no matter our religious belief, we as Americans should not want the government to promote our religion. And Christian nationalism argues for just that. It argues for a privileged place for Christianity in American society, and it argues that to truly belong as an American, one must be Christian and have a particular Christian viewpoint. And
right. I want to just jump in. I just want to jump in here because we're running out of time. I want to get to the last question. What is President Trump's standing among religious conservatives, and what issues are going to matter most to them in the midterms?
Well, Christian nationalism is the motivating factor that can predict so many of these other outcomes. And sociologists have studied this and have shown that how closely one adheres to the ideology of Christian nationalism can predict a number of other policy positions, including on gun control, on democracy initiatives, on immigration, and we saw President Trump appeal to all of those factors in his speech today. And so once we understand that Christian nationalism is the motivating factor, we can attack it. And it's one sign of hope that I'm seeing is that a growing number of ideologically diverse Christians are joining with us at Christians Against Christian Nationalism to try to understand this ideology, to see how it motivates a number of different policy positions, and to work to dismantle it, because it really does threaten not just religious freedom, but American democracy itself. We saw that on January 6th, and we must heed that wake-up call and stay awake to the dangers of Christian nationalism. And that responsibility, I believe, falls most heavily on Christians to work to dismantle this ideology.
Amanda,
okay.
Okay, we're just missing the drama and the music in the background.
Oh
here.
yeah.
You know,
oh yeah.
How many times did she say Christian nationalism? First of all.
Okay, so first of all, the term Christian nationalism was invented by the media for this specific purpose.
There you go. That's the point.
This specific purpose.
They're introducing the existence of Christian nationalism, which does not exist.
I had not even heard this. Thank you.
So Christian nationalism is also, they interchange it with white Christian nationalism, or white nationalism, or white supremacy. It's all interchangeable for them. Mm-hmm. So this is a media-made evil guy. This is the evil, right? This is the evil and they're the good. This is the good versus the bad.
Well, they're marginalizing. This is how this is the PC way of marginalizing white people.
Absolutely.
I had never
but it's
seen
even
this.
bigger and more dangerous than that. So let's go to the
President
next slide here.
Wow. I hadn't heard of that. I mean, that viciously. Wow.
Oh yeah, and CBS has a whole, like, it's I've seen ads for, like, you know, like the January 6th insurrection and Christian nationalism is together in the same sentence on everything that CBS says. everything, and I was shocked. Before I saw that, I ordered this book. It's called Christian Nationalism. Subtitle is A Biblical Guide to Taking Dominion and Discipling Nations. And it's written by the man who founded Gab. Do you guys know what Gab is?
No. Andrew Torba.
Andrew Torba.
Yeah.
So Gab is like Facebook, but Twitter. Andrew Torba...
More of a Twitter.
It's kind of both. I haven't been on it much.
Oh, I have heard of Gab.
So Andrew Torba, who wrote this book, he is a super Christian, but he created Gab, and his whole goal is to create a parallel universe, a parallel economy. So instead of fighting the economy that is trying to censor us, he's just creating a new one where we're just free to do what we want, and we're doing. And he is a powerful force. This book is very small. He has taken it upon himself to define Christian nationalism from a Christian's perspective, and this is a very good read. I don't agree with everything in here. There's like one point that I didn't agree with, but it is very, very good. So I highly recommend reading this. So now we're gonna kind of tackle what we can of that clip. I mean, we could unpack that clip for days, but just real quick, we're just gonna go through what Christian nationalism is not. Christian nationalists do not believe that there is believe that to be a true American, you must be a Christian. I've never heard that in my life. That is not a thing.
No, it's not.
We do not worship the Constitution. Some people might think it's inspired, but it's definitely not on the level of the Bible. We don't think it's scripture. Nobody wants to replace the government with religion, especially Christians. I mean, our whole country was founded on separation of church and state. That is very, very important. It's not white supremacy. It is not an extremist group, although extremists on both ends are in all belief systems. So conflating the extremist with everyday Christians is propaganda. And you even heard her in her example of the murder. She's like, it empowered an extremist. It's like, well, every belief system empowers an extremist. Extremists exist on their own with or without that belief system. They'll find something to be extreme about. And then this one, which really got me, the sporting or waving Christian symbols. As if that is a sign that you are an extremist. What that is really trying to do, what she's saying there is she's trying to step on the freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and freedom to assemble. If you can't wave a sign without being labeled an extremist or a terrorist, I mean, that's un-American. You should be allowed to wave a sign. That doesn't make you a danger.
What sign was she talking about?
She was talking about like Christian symbols at the insurrectionist, at the right, like signs with crosses on them, or the Christian flag, or like just your basic everyday Christian.
I remember the shaman guy. That's what I remember.
Yeah, I didn't really personally see.
He didn't really stand out as being.
They raised a big ass cross.
They did.
I think there was a cross, yeah, but I never saw any video clip of it.
Right.
So one thing I want to note about January 6th, I personally took that day off of work. I took that day off of work to watch the electoral vote count because I had never watched it before, and I wanted to see what would happen in this election that clearly showed signs of fraud. Clearly. So I wanted to watch it. So I was upstairs and I had my desktop screen, I had it plugged into my TV, and I had my phone and my iPad. I had 4 screens with me. And on my desktop screen, I was watching Newsmax Live. On my TV, I was watching whitehouse.gov live. And on my phone, I was following independent journalists that I had been following all year who would live stream events like this. And they were there live streaming those events.
Wow. Taylor Hanson?
Wow. Drew Hernandez. Love him. Yeah. He is fantastic. I found him when he was just starting out.
He's the one that got the Kyle Rittenhouse footage. I watched that live.
Yeah, he is amazing. He was such a young, like super young kid doing investigative journaling, and all he would do would wear multiple body cams, live stream it, go out there in the field, and he would just live stream it. And then he started a podcast to comment about it. Okay. And he's just amazing.
What platform do you find him
He was on Instagram, but I think Fox News has picked him up.
Okay.
He's kind of all over the place.
Cool.
He's been backed by Tatum. Is that his name?
Brandon Tatum.
Thank you. Oh man. So I was watching all of this go down on January 6th. I saw in the White House.
He's with the Blaze.
Or okay, not in the White House, but on WhiteHouse.gov, I saw everything stop because there was commotion outside. I watched everything stop and I watched them be ushered out. And then live streams started popping up on my phone and I was watching multiple live streams. I saw Ashley Babbitt get shot in real time. I saw her get murdered in real time because she didn't even see the person shooting her. Someone had broken a window in the door and they were helping her climb through it, and there was a security guard hiding behind a corner and just straight up shot her. She didn't even see it. She wasn't even armed. Wow. And I saw her get murdered in real time. So
That's disturbing.
It was very disturbing. And eventually I had 4 screens on my TV, all of live streamers from different angles. I saw more that day than any one person there. And I was shocked. I was shocked that I had taken the day off because I just felt like I needed to.
Yeah.
And I saw so much. So there is nothing anyone could ever say to me about January 6th that would ever make me think that this is an insurrection. Because I saw people try and stop young people from being violent, like multiple people were trying to stop it. And I think it was planned. I think it was orchestrated 100%. Okay.
Did you see the footage of Pelosi?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, right?
Oh,
she had
yeah.
a film crew following her that day.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, and there were guards dressed in complete head-to-toe armor just standing there watching the building get smashed.
And so you, of course, have heard Andrew Strzok's account of what happened.
I haven't heard his specific...
Brandon Strzok, thank you, sorry.
I haven't heard his specific account, but I've heard a lot of different accounts, and I think they're pretty much all the same.
Because that would concur with what you're just describing.
Yeah.
Well, Paige...
People were being let into the building, but at the same time, people were, like, climbing up the building and destroying it. Yeah. And you know, it was just chaos, and it was planted chaos.
Thank you for your testimony. I actually will take the word of someone I know, a neighbor, over like the joke of a inquiry that they're having into it.
Yeah.
So thank you.
It was
I appreciate
it
that.
was pretty epic.
And then the kangaroo court.
The kangaroo court.
I didn't even watch it. But yeah.
There was a bunch of feds because they still won't testify whether or not, they can't comment on whether or not they had agents in the crowd.
They absolutely did. They did. I mean,
yeah, of course they did. But by not saying they did, admits that they did.
Yeah.
Then there's the Ray Epps situation. There's also they're just using it as a way to scapegoat Trump or anybody else.
Yeah, it's a huge scapegoat.
And I guarantee you, a lot of our base and the people that we would have got in the streets for our rallies and protests they're feeling the shunning effect or the chilling effect from this because they don't want to be labeled as terrorists.
Right.
And even now, Guy Urquhart or whatever his name is coming out and saying that the biggest domestic threat in America is.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
So it's a bridge too far, though. That's the whole point.
Absolutely.
See,
I'm gonna get there.
Okay.
I'm gonna get there.
I'll leave that.
Okay, so let's go over really quickly just what it is, what Christian nationalism is. It believes in freedom, and with that freedom comes the freedom to choose. Otherwise, it would not be freedom. Our rights come direct. As Christian nationalists, we believe that our rights come directly from God, not the government. I think we can all agree that our rights are sovereign. They at least do not come from other men. We respect and understand the need for the separation of church and state, which exists so that the government cannot influence church. That's why it exists. Church can influence government because church is culture, church is society.
Yeah, people need to understand that distinction too.
Unless they're a 501c3, and then they're prohibited from. If they're a 501c3, a church is prohibited from campaigning or contributing.
Right. I mean, they can't influence.
Well, I'm just saying that's like a backward application.
If they're
So I like your point.
Right. Because then they would get their tax status revoked.
Right.
But you're making a good point. I'm saying that they're violating that.
Yeah. So, and that's like, the religious freedom aspect of the foundation of our country is very important to keep government out of that. That is one of the major reasons why America exists. And we like that. Christianity is a religion that deals with matters of the heart and purity of the soul. It has nothing to do with race and ethnicity. We're called to create nations, disciple nations, all of them.
Very good point.
I lost my point here. Okay. Since we believe that God created the entire world and Christ died for all sins, we believe that every nation can be Christian, not by force, that would be inherently unchristian, but rather through prayer and discipleship. And again, read this, it'll kind of explain that more. And another source that I highly recommend you watch is a documentary called Sheep Among Wolves. It explores the mass killing of Christians in Iran, and it is an example of what Christianity and the church really should be. American Christianity is very comfortable. Nice. Very soft. Yeah. Oh, another documentary, if you want to write this down, the American Gospel. It dissects American Christianity from prosperity doctrine, and how prosperity doctrine has really watered down Christianity as a whole. So that's a really good documentary too.
What's that? What's the name again?
It's called American Gospel. I think there's 2 of them.
Okay.
Christ Alone is the good one. There's 2 of them. They're both good, but Christ Alone is better.
Okay.
Okay, so I wanted to explain what dominion and discipleship mean, because I think a lot of people get really scared about the word dominion. I think people, I mean, I'm guessing, but I think they interpret that as like we want to dominate the whole world, right?
Yeah.
That's not really what it means. We already believe that Christ is king over the whole world. We don't have really any interest as Christian nationalists to control the whole world from a government standpoint. So I think this verse, Ephesians 6:12, explains dominion really well. It says, for our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. So really what Christian nationalists focus on dominating is the heavenly realms, and they do that through prayer and worship. I'm saying they, but me, I don't know. And then discipleship, Matthew 28 says, and this is Christ speaking, he says, therefore go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I've commanded. Not forcing, not fear-mongering, not coercing, teaching. And I do think that the church gets this wrong a lot, because no one is really going to follow Christ unless they want to. I mean, nobody wants to listen to a lesson unless they want to hear it. And myself included. Like, I've been a Christian my whole life, and I don't want people forcing something on me that I'm either not ready to hear or just not interested, And so there's a lot that kind of goes with that, but it's really about teaching. It's about being kind of in the right place at the right time, sort of understanding who you're talking to, feeling it out. So those are those, I feel like that's a pretty good definition of kind of a foundation of what this is. It's spiritual and it's physical. And Christian nationalists really understand the power of the heavenly realm. Okay, so next slide. In reality, they're not after me, they're after you. I'm just in the way. This is a real quote, by the way. He actually said
pretty
this.
good, yeah.
Yeah. And he's right. So why are they after Christians? Because Christian values stand up against Marxism, which seeks to destroy our country and take away personal freedom. And some of these values are strong family unit, which isn't even unique to Christianity. Every strong nation has a strong family unit. That doesn't even have to be a religious thing. But Marxism, literally in their own words, on BLM's website until they took it down, said that they seek to disrupt the nuclear family. Yeah. Very evil. Sovereign rights. Our rights don't come from the government. Dependency on God, all that He created, and our community, not government. So, dependency on God, Christian nationalists, all that He created. For me, I felt this was important to include because I think that everything in creation exists to keep us healthy and whole. I don't think big pharma is needed. I really don't. And as a
let's hear that a round of applause for that.
Preposterous.
Yeah. Thank you, Dick. As an amateur herbalist, I think that there is a lot of lost information about the health benefits, the physical, psychological, all the benefits of just plain nature. You know, chamomile tea helps you go to sleep. Willow bark, aspirin is made from willow bark, but aspirin only takes one compound out of willow bark. And the natural elements of
Don't you
these
just have
things.
to boil willow bark?
Yeah, I make tea with it for pain management.
Wow.
I do a lot of teas. Teas is what I do. But anyway, so I think that is important. We don't need big pharma. We don't need government. We have everything that we need, especially if we have community. And then faith and works. Faith being the prayer and the worship, and works being voting. Just to be simple, just in simple terms, you know, go out there and do the work. Be involved in your community. Don't just sit around and pray and hope. You can't just do that. You have to do both. Faith without works is dead.
Yeah.
It's in there.
I just wanted to make a comment on that, being a Christian myself and in my church. I know some fellow believers that just think, oh yeah, we just pray for our nation. Yeah, you should pray, that's true. Okay, but it doesn't stop there. You need to be in the public square too. Whatever that means to you, you need to be involved in the public square. You vote, you know, whatever that means to you. Maybe it's donating to a good cause that's going to do some positive good in the community. Maybe it's
help with the homeless.
Help the homeless,
help with
exactly.
the community service kind of thing. Whatever
Soup
that
kitchen,
means.
whatever.
But I get so frustrated with Christians that just say, "Oh, I'll just pray."
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, and you know, this is really a critique not just on what the media thinks Christian nationalism is, but what Christians really are doing, because they're not doing their job, in my opinion.
Well, I agree. Yeah.
They're at least not upholding their own faith very well.
A lot of them want the end of the world. You know, they're primed to
Oh,
think.
he talks about that in here too.
Well, and a lot of them just don't want to get into the conflict or into the fight. They
Right.
don't want,
They're too pacifist.
Yeah.
But Christ even says, pick up your sword. Like, you know, go, defend yourself.
Yeah.
He's not asking us to just sit back and like whatever happens,
know.
happens, you know?
I know.
No, we're supposed to be active participants in this battle.
Okay, I have a caveat here.
Okay.
Okay, I hear this big government, we don't need government, you know, blah, blah, blah. I totally disagree with that. Government is an instrument of we the people. When it no longer is an instrument of we the people, then it is our enemy. That this distinction is not made, so that the baby is thrown out with the bathwater.
You're right. I'm not making that
No, I
distinction.
know you're not, but I'm saying that's the problem I have with a lot of people that attack the government.
And I'm not saying that we don't need government. I'm not saying that.
But it's being used that way by certain of the Rhino faction is using the attack on government to justify the private looting by the corporations and so on and so forth. So it's a slip. That's my caveat. That's all. That's all I have to say.
Oh yeah,
Well,
that's the one I
but if I
thought.
could have
That's
a
good.
caveat to that.
I've
We
seen that
don't
one.
want to look to big government to be the supplier
Nice.
and replacement of like fathers to provide in the home.
Yeah.
Or, you know,
No, that's not what government's there for.
Well,
But that's what they're trying to be. They're trying to
That's
be
what they're trying to do, though.
Yeah.
daddies, or they're trying to be your dad. They're trying
Because
to be
then,
God.
Daddy, nanny,
when you
and
do that,
tranny.
then your
Yeah.
responsibility then you abrogate your responsibility, because ultimately we are the government. So you are abrogating. The government is a tool, not a dependent. I agree with.
Government has to do with laws. It does not have to do with like social issues. You know, like the government is there to govern. It is not there to give you a hug.
No.
And a free donut and a shot. Like that's not what it's there for.
No.
It's there to regulate laws and keep order.
And provide an environment for
freedom.
For private enterprise,
exactly.
for whatever.
Well, they should keep the peace so that we can go about our lives and
Right.
be good
But
producers for
the
ourselves.
the key is self-government. Because when you remove self-government, then that's when you go down the tubes.
Government is like a fiery, dangerous servant and a fearful master.
Okay, so I'm almost done, guys.
Oh, it's okay. Take your time.
Stories
This is really
that
good.
strengthen community, because I think I'm using community in the way
stories.
that Paul is saying, you know, we are the government, and I think community is incredibly important, because you wouldn't have we are the government without community. So stories that strengthen community. History. Those who fail to learn from history are doomed to repeat it. History is not being taught in our schools anymore. Just point blank, it's not being taught. And if it is being taught, it's not being taught accurately. It's being taught incredibly biased. What they teach is that there is the oppressor and there is the oppressed, and that's it. That's it. There's no conqueror, there's no victor, there's no progression of humanity. It's just the people who want to dominate and the people who get dominated. And that is just not even true in life. Like, that's a fairy tale, really. It's not real. So knowing our American history, knowing our religious history, and sharing it is very important for community. It's the foundation of community. And then we have holidays, which celebrate memorable days in history with our community, solidifying strong culture. Celebrating our victories in history together helps us remember history, helps us pass it down. It strengthens us. And then the last one is traditions. Traditions are a physical and mindful way to express gratitude, remembrance, and honor for the lessons history has taught us. Now, traditions are where we can recognize that maybe we made mistakes in our history, or the lessons that we learned from those mistakes. Because you don't need a history that's perfect. No history is perfect. But if you can learn from that mistake and find a tradition, find the positive lesson in that mistake and build a tradition around it, then you can pass that lesson on. So holidays and traditions are just a way to pass on history. And if we can do that and stick with that and keep it truthful, we've got good community. We've got a strong bond, a strong front against everything that's coming at us.
Yeah, because the community's strength, like you said.
Exactly. The community
bonding.
is the front lines of this fight. And if we don't have that, we're just all going to be slaves.
And one thing that happened with COVID was everybody was masking up. You didn't see faces. And
6 feet distance, can't build community if you can't 6 feet.
Yeah.
It was very purposeful. It was all purposeful. You can't see facial expressions. You can't emote what you're really feeling because your face is covered up. You can't be close enough to hug or connect with someone in a community way. I mean, it's all purposeful.
It hurt the kids so much.
Oh my gosh, don't even get me started.
No,
I try not to think about it, it's so upsetting.
I'm sorry, I know, I try not to think about it either.
I'm actually working on writing a children's series about all of this. It's a big project, but that's what started all of this, was that kind of passion project. And then I got more and more involved in trying to understand what was happening so I could write it. Let me just tell you, trying to write reality for 8-year-olds is very hard. Very hard.
And Paige, the first thing you contacted me about was, can we do something about the schools? You wanted to do that campaign, and then we put it off. We actually should revisit it because the schools.
There's so much happening in
so
the
many
schools,
other issues than COVID right now.
Yeah, I mean, the trans stuff in schools, the critical race theory in schools. I mean, my heart just breaks into a million pieces for what is happening to our schools right now.
It is.
And
I don't
even know what to do other than
it's going to lead to something I didn't want, but I don't see any way out. Maybe you have a better idea of school choice. I think it's going to lead to.
I think homeschool is the only choice right now.
I think
no, but I mean that includes school choice includes homeschool.
Oh,
Yeah.
a lot of parents are pulling their kids out of homeschool.
So there was 2 million people I can't remember the statistic, but it was something like 2 million people in Seattle, 2 million families pulled their kids out of schools in Seattle.
No, well, no, that would be that many. 2 million. I think.
No, maybe is that nation?
Because there's 1 million population in.
Was it nationwide?
Nationwide.
I think it is nationwide. Yeah,
okay.
that would make sense.
I think I have that statistic.
Just
it
sure
went according to my statistics, it went from 3% to 11% or 10%.
Okay.
Wow. Well, what began in Loudoun County has spread. You know, it all started there.
Yeah. Yeah, there's huge homeschool campaigns. I mean...
And there's also called teacher pods.
Teacher pods?
Where you hire one teacher full-time, and you bring a bunch of families together, and you pick up one of the homes, which is adequate for, and you have teacher pods. And that's starting to grow. And then under the school choice, the homeschooling can pay for, gets the money, the teacher pods gets the money, the private school gets the money, and you have, and now if you're poor, you can get your child out of school.
Yeah.
And it's,
I have a question.
Paige, is this your last?
Yeah, this is it. I'm done.
We're gonna do questions, but Paige, would you like to wrap up?
Building strong community is how we win the war. That's how we win. I mean, and then that community, you know, needs to kind of like be on the same page, but that's another slideshow. So.
Right. You guys, that was really enlightening. I appreciate it.
That was awesome.
Thank you.